I was on one of the first citizen convoys into ISIS territory. And after 6 years, I'm finally releasing each of the photos I took on that trip. Today, I run a language learning startup. We built the first virtual world where you can immerse in a language with a PhD level teacher. But the story started way earlier in the Middle East. It's 2017, 3 years into the war with ISIS, and the foundation I worked for had been supporting the politicians and religious leaders who chose to take a stand against ISIS. And they said they were fighting for human rights and democracy and religious tolerance. They were the heroes, but it was my job to support them. And one morning in March of 2017, I got a call. And they said, Quinn, the US-led coalition was right on the cusp of taking back the most important city in the caliphate. It's called Mosul. It's in northern Iraq. It's the second biggest city in Iraq. And those friends of mine said, we want to be the first people back in Mosul. We want to show the world we're not afraid and that we're taking a stand for freedom. March 15th, a team that I was a part of entered for the first time, liberated eastern side of Mosul. So Mosul has the famous ancient biblical river Tigris. The Tigris runs right through Mosul. On the west side, fighting was still going on. We're talking mortars falling, plumes of smoke in the air, can hear every shot ricocheting. But what we saw as some of the first people to enter Mosul was that some of the most terrible tactics ISIS used was against the churches. They had for 3 years turned the churches into prisons and brothels and armories where they'd store their heavy weaponry. Days before they had fled across the Tigris, they destroyed everything. They burned the ancient manuscripts. They graffitied the walls of all of the churches and burnt the 1,000-year-old tapestries that had hung from the walls for generations. Every church that we visited with a lot of these religious leaders, they were burned to the core. It scenes like this that 5-6 years later are still etched into my memory. And I honestly, I can't revisit these pictures without feeling a lump in my throat. But also, so much of that time and what those friends stand for was hope and this dream to rebuild. And I'm still in touch with a lot of them. And it's the reason we started the company that we did. They knew it's gonna take a generation to rebuild, but we have the hope to do it. I'm gonna film another video where I'm gonna tell more of their stories. And I'm actually gonna show how our team built the first English school in this part of Iraq after ISIS territory, and how it's being used to educate hundreds and thousands of the refugees that I used to visit.